Hi, James here, and it is exam time, so it is my tip number 2 on how to survive through exams and really how to prepare for these exams that you're about to face. My tip number 2 actually is a little bit of a jab in that what you need to have as you go into your exams are a great set of notes, which means throughout your course, throughout the 15 weeks or so that you've been meeting with a professor, that you've been meeting for a lecture, that you've been watching something on Zoom, you have been taking notes of the core ideas. And this is really important. Note-taking is probably one of the most important tools that you can cultivate as a student and leading into your life in business, as an entrepreneur, in an NGO, whatever you're going to do, being able to take concise notes that allow you to reference what it is you've been talking about, what it is you've been listening to do, what it is you're supposed to do. Notes that serve as that resource are hugely important. And I don't mean writing out every single word that a professor or an instructor or a lecturer is saying, getting those core main ideas. And in any lecture that you're attending, there's really only going to be 1 or 2 core ideas that have sub-things that you need to know, that you need to learn, that you need to think about. And those sub-things, ultimately, there's going to be some that you already know. So those aren't the ones you need to take a whole bunch of notes on. It's the ones you don't know that you're going to have to fill out. But you need to have the references and the reference pieces to start working from. And there you need your notes. And your notes are a beautiful document that links back to what's been said in class, but forward to the readings that you've been asked to do. So you can start linking things. Now, I know you're thinking, James, I didn't take any notes. Or James, my notes are really terrible. So my first piece of advice is sit down with your colleagues, get a partner, get a small study group, 2, 3 people, sit down and compare how bad your notes are. So celebrate for 5 minutes that you really did a terrible job, and then start to construct those notes between you. Start to go through each of your lectures, looking at the lecture materials, considering the readings that you should have done, hopefully you've done them, and now start considering what are the core points from each class based on the lecture materials and lecture notes that you have. Honestly, you'll be surprised at how much you actually have and how much you can actually reconstitute. That's your first thing. So then but what are you not doing? You're not writing everything out. You're simply looking at your course materials, your course readings, your course notes, and you're now making a reference guide to it of the core ideas, core principles, core things that you need to know about. From that reference guide, those things that you don't understand, those things that are a little foggy, then you know what you have to go back and look at. Those things that you know well, those things that you can talk about, those things that you can describe. Great, you're good to go, check it off and move on. The second thing you need to do, and this is active and happening right now, the second thing you need to do is if you're in a class like, say, mine, we're getting to the end of semester. We got, 3 weeks left, which means in those 3 weeks, I'm giving out a few more assessments, I'm returning assessments, I've got some in-class presentations, and I'm doing some review, ongoing review. If you have been negligent at making great notes up to this point, here is where you save yourself. Because if you're in a class like my class, what I'm doing is making sure that you're familiar with the core ideas that you will be assessed on in your finals. So again, you want to be taking notes in these classes of the core ideas that are being brought up. If you know those core ideas, check it off, move on. If you're talking about a core idea that you don't know, a definition, set of terms, an explanation, and you don't understand the flow, you can't remember it, go back to your materials, go back to your notes, go back to your readings, go back to talking with your fellow colleagues, go back to talking to the professor about that core thing. If you know a bunch of stuff, check it off, move on. From your notes that you're taking from the last classes, where you've got ideas that are being presented, make sure that you're listening and make sure that you're taking reference and making note of the core ideas that are being presented. Because if they're being presented in the last 3 weeks of class, inevitably that professor is going to put that material onto some form of assessment. So you want to be aware of it. And if you're doing that, I know it sounds overwhelming. It's not. If you're doing that, you're going to really have yourself set up nicely for your final assessments, but also you're engaging in that active activity of listening and being able to take a large amount of material and reduce it down to the core ideas that you really need to know. So you're eliminating all the filler and you're just keeping the golden meat there. It's that simple. So if you don't have your notes, if you don't have good notes, you're not lost. One, get together with a small group and compare what you've got and try to reconstitute the core ideas from each of your lectures. And two, still really be engaging in the last couple of lectures that you've got, be attending those review sessions, be listening to what's being said, be making notes of the core things that are being brought up about so that you can go back and reference them and make sure you know them, because if they're being brought up at the end of the semester, they're inevitably very important. There you go. That's my study tip number 2. Good luck and more to come. Talk to you soon. James out.